The maintenance bay of the Starship Horizon hummed with the constant drone of life support systems. Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from beneath the quantum drive housing, his jumpsuit stained with coolant fluid and metal shavings. The human engineer had been working for 6 hours straight, trying to coax another few parsecs of range from their aging faster-than-light drive. Still fighting with that antique? The voice belonged to Zarathek, though she insisted the human crew call her Zara. The tall, elegant alien stood in the doorway of the maintenance bay. Her 4 arms crossed in what Marcus had learned was her species' equivalent of amusement. Her skin shimmered with a pale blue luminescence, and her large, dark eyes reflected the workshop's harsh lighting. Marcus groaned as he pulled himself to his feet. At 32, he was supposedly in his prime, but 6 months aboard this salvage vessel had aged him considerably. "This thing should have been scrapped 20 years ago," he muttered, gesturing at the drive assembly. "I'm basically performing miracles at this point." Zara stepped into the bay, her movements graceful despite her 7-foot height. Her species, the Veltar, were known throughout the galaxy for their technological prowess and their aloof nature. Most humans considered themselves lucky to even meet one, let alone work alongside them. Marcus still wasn't sure how Captain Rodriguez had managed to recruit her for their small salvage operation. "Perhaps you require assistance," Zara said, though her tone suggested she doubted a human could need help with anything she couldn't handle herself. "The Veltar have been working with quantum mechanics for over 2 millennia. Marcus chuckled, a sound that seemed to surprise her. "Thanks, but I think I've got it figured out. Sometimes these old human-built systems just need a gentle touch." He patted the drive housing affectionately. "She's temperamental, but she responds well to encouragement." "You speak of the machine as if it were alive," Zara observed, moving closer to examine his work. Marcus caught a faint scent, something like ozone mixed with starflower blossoms. He'd never been this close to a Veltar before joining the crew. "In a way, she is," Marcus replied, checking his tablet for the diagnostic readings. "Every ship develops its own personality over time. You learn to read their moods, understand their quirks." He looked up to find Zara staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?" "Your species continues to surprise me," she said carefully. "Most civilizations view their technology as tools to be discarded when they become obsolete. Humans seem to develop emotional attachments to inanimate objects." "Maybe that's why we're still around," Marcus said with a grin. "While other species are busy building newer, better ships, we're out here making the old ones run forever." The diagnostic beep indicated the repairs were complete. "Speaking of which, I think I just bought us another month before this drive gives up completely." Zara moved to the viewing port that looked out into space. Through the transparent aluminum, the debris field of an ancient battle stretched as far as the eye could see. Twisted metal hulks drifted silently in the void, some still bearing the scars of weapons fire from a war that had ended before Marcus was born. "The Keth Mori graveyard," Zara said softly. "My people fought here once, long ago. We lost many ships, many lives." Marcus joined her at the viewport. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you had a personal connection to this place." "Most of my kind prefer not to speak of past conflicts," Zara replied. "We find it unproductive. But humans seem to remember everything, do they not? Your histories are filled with detailed accounts of every battle, every loss. Sometimes remembering helps us avoid making the same mistakes," Marcus said, "though we're not always successful at that." He watched as a piece of debris slowly tumbled past their ship. "Captain Rodriguez says this salvage run could set us up for months. Apparently there's some rare alloy in these wrecks that the shipyards are paying premium prices for." "Veltarium," Zara confirmed. "It was used in our hull plating before we developed more advanced materials. Highly durable but difficult to synthesize." She turned away from the viewport. I should return to my duties. The sensor array requires recalibration. As she moved toward the exit, Marcus called after her. Zara, thanks for checking on me. I know you didn't have to. She paused in the doorway, her back still turned. The success of this mission depends on all crew members maintaining peak efficiency, she said formally. But there was something in her voice, a slight softness that hadn't been there before. Rest when you can, Marcus Chen. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Marcus watched her go, wondering not for the first time about the enigmatic alien who had joined their crew. In the 6 months they'd worked together, she had been professional, competent, and completely closed off. The Veltar were known for their emotional restraint, but sometimes Marcus caught glimpses of something else beneath the surface. He turned back to the drive assembly, running a final diagnostic check. The quantum field generators were holding steady, and the power coupling had stopped fluctuating. It wasn't perfect, but it would get them through the salvage operation and back to port. The comm system crackled to life. Chen, report to the bridge, came Captain Rodriguez's voice. We've got something on long-range sensors. Marcus wiped his hands on his jumpsuit and headed for the bridge. The Horizon was a small ship, and it only took him a few minutes to reach the command center. Captain Rodriguez stood at the tactical display, her weathered face creased with concern. Beside her, the ship's pilot, Jakub Kowalski, studied the sensor readouts. What's the situation, Captain? Marcus asked. Unknown contact, bearing 27 Mark IV, Rodriguez replied. It's big, moving fast, and heading straight for the graveyard. Marcus studied the display. The contact was indeed large, easily 3 times the size of the Horizon. Could be a salvage competitor, he suggested, or maybe a Navy patrol. That's what I'm hoping, Rodriguez said grimly. Jakub, how long before they reach scanner range? About 2 hours at current velocity, the pilot replied in his thick Polish accent. Should I begin preparing evasive maneuvers? Before Rodriguez could answer, Zara's voice came over the comm from the sensor station. Captain, I am detecting additional signatures. Multiple smaller vessels previously masked by the larger ship's energy output. The bridge fell silent. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. How many? Rodriguez asked. 17 smaller craft, Zara reported. Configuration unknown, but they are maintaining formation around the larger vessel. That's no salvage operation, Kowalski muttered, and too many ships for a patrol. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Pirates, has to be. They probably think this graveyard is easy pickings. She activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We have possible hostiles inbound. Secure all gear and prepare for potential combat maneuvers. Marcus's heart rate increased. The Horizon was a salvage vessel, not a warship. They had basic shields and a single plasma cannon for cutting through debris, but against 17 attack craft, they wouldn't stand a chance in a straight fight. Captain, Zara's voice came over the comm again. I am detecting weapon signatures from the unknown vessels. Multiple plasma arrays and something else. Energy patterns I do not recognize. Options? Rodriguez asked, looking around the bridge. We could run, Kowalski suggested. Our jump drive is operational. We could be back in Alliance space in 6 hours. And lose the biggest payday we've seen in 2 years, Rodriguez replied. Plus, if these are pirates, they'll strip this graveyard clean and move on to attack other salvage crews. Marcus studied the tactical display, an idea forming in his mind. Captain, what if we don't run? What if we hide? All eyes turned to him. Explain, Rodriguez said. This is a graveyard, right? Hundreds of derelict ships, most of them still intact enough to show up on sensors. What if we powered down everything except life support and drifted in among the wrecks? We'd look like just another piece of debris. Zara's voice came through the comm with what sounded like approval. It could work. The ambient radiation from the wrecks would help mask our heat signature. It's risky, Kowalski pointed out. If they have active scanners, they might detect us anyway. And if they don't, we wait them out, Rodriguez said, considering the plan. How long would our life support last on minimum power? Marcus did quick calculations in his head. 48 hours, maybe 60 if we're careful. The captain was quiet for a long moment, weighing their options. Finally, she nodded. Do it. Jakub, find us a good hiding spot among the wrecks. Marcus, get down to engineering and prepare for silent running. Zara, I want continuous passive monitoring of those ships. As the crew sprang into action, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their problems were just beginning. He made his way back to the engine room, checking power systems and preparing to shut down all non-essential functions. The quantum drive powered down with a low whine, and the ship's lights dimmed to emergency levels. Through the ship's hull, Marcus could feel the vibrations as Jakub maneuvered them deeper into the debris field. The pilot was good, threading the horizon between massive hull fragments and twisted superstructure with the skill of someone who had been flying since he was old enough to reach the controls. Position achieved, came Jakub's voice over the comm. We are nestled between a Veltar cruiser and what looks like a human destroyer. Both ships appear to have been gutted by weapons fire. Good work, Rodriguez replied. All stations. Maintain communication silence unless absolutely necessary. Marcus settled in at his engineering station, monitoring the ship's vital signs on minimal power. The life support systems hummed quietly in the background, recycling air and maintaining temperature. Everything looked stable for now. An hour passed in tense silence. Then Zara's voice whispered through the comm system. Unknown vessels have entered the graveyard. I count 18 ships total. They are beginning a systematic search pattern. Marcus watched his displays nervously. The Horizon's power signature was minimal, but if the pirates had military-grade sensors, they might still be detected. He found himself holding his breath as the minutes ticked by. One of the smaller vessels is approaching our sector, Zara reported quietly. Distance, 5 kilometers and closing. Through the emergency lighting, Marcus could see the tension on the faces of his crewmates. Captain Rodriguez stood rigid at her station, while Jakub's hands hovered over the flight controls, ready to run if necessary. The pirate ship passed within 2 kilometers of their position, its powerful searchlights sweeping across the debris field. For a terrifying moment, the light played across the Horizon's hull, and Marcus was certain they'd been spotted. But the ship continued on its search pattern without stopping. Contact moving away, Zara whispered. We remain undetected. Marcus allowed himself to breathe again. Maybe this plan would actually work. Maybe they could wait out the pirates and continue their salvage operation once the coast was clear. But as he watched the sensor displays, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The pirates weren't just searching randomly. They were moving in a deliberate pattern, systematically covering every section of the graveyard. At their current rate, they would search the entire debris field within 12 hours, and when they did, they would inevitably find the Horizon. Marcus stared at the tactical display, his mind racing as he calculated search patterns and time estimates. The pirates were thorough, methodical. They weren't just raiders looking for easy targets. They were professionals. Captain, he whispered into his comm unit, I need to show you something. Rodriguez appeared in the engine room minutes later, moving carefully through the darkened corridors. Marcus pointed to his displays, showing the enemy search pattern overlaid on a map of the debris field. They'll find us, he said quietly. Maybe not in the next few hours, but eventually. Their search grid is too tight. The captain studied the data, her expression grim. How long do we have? Best case? 10 hours. Worst case? 4. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. What are our options? Before Marcus could answer, Zara materialized in the doorway like a pale ghost. Despite her height and 4 arms, she moved with surprising stealth when she wanted to. "I may have a solution," she said softly. Both humans turned to look at her. In the dim emergency lighting, her bioluminescent skin cast an ethereal glow that made her appear almost supernatural. "I have been monitoring their communications," Zara continued. "They are not merely pirates. The larger vessel bears markings of the hegemony." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The hegemony was a loose alliance of species that believed in genetic and technological superiority. They viewed humans as primitive upstarts and treated most other species as slaves or cattle. If hegemony forces were in alliance space, it could mean war. "Why would the hegemony be interested in an old battlefield?" Rodriguez asked. "The same reason we are here," Zara replied. "But they are not seeking Veltarium for its commercial value. They intend to study our old technology, reverse engineer it for military purposes." "So we're not just hiding from pirates," Marcus said. "We're hiding from potential invaders." Zara nodded grimly. "There is more. I recognize the energy signatures of their weapons. They are using modified Veltar technology, stolen designs from raids on our outer colonies." "All the more reason to stay hidden," Rodriguez said. "If they're using your people's own weapons against them—" "You do not understand," Zara interrupted, a rare display of emotion creeping into her voice. "Those weapon signatures match technology from my home system. Ships that were supposed to be protecting my family's colony." Her luminescence flickered, a sign of distress that Marcus had never seen before. The implications hit him like a physical blow. "You think they attacked your home?" "I believe my colony is gone," Zara said simply. "And if the hegemony has penetrated this far into alliance space, other worlds will follow." Rodriguez rubbed her temples, processing this information. "Even more reason to get word back to Alliance Command, but we can't do that if we're dead." "Actually," Marcus said slowly, an idea forming, "maybe we can do both." Both women looked at him expectantly. "The hegemony ships are searching methodically, right? But they're avoiding the larger wrecks, probably assuming they're too damaged to hide anything." He pulled up a schematic of the nearby debris. "That Veltar cruiser we're hiding next to, it's huge, big enough to hide our entire ship inside its hull breach." "That is extremely dangerous," Zara said. "The structural integrity of that vessel is unknown. Any sudden movement could cause a catastrophic collapse." "But if we could get inside without being detected," Marcus continued, "we'd be completely hidden. And more importantly, we'd be in position to do something about this situation." "Such as?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus's grin was visible even in the dim light. "That cruiser might be dead, but I bet its long-range communication array is still intact. Veltar ships are built to last. If I could get it working, we could send a message to Alliance Command warning them about the hegemony presence." "The power requirements alone," Zara began, "could be supplied by our ship's reactor if we reroute everything through the cruiser's system," Marcus finished. "It would be tricky, but possible." Rodriguez considered the plan. "What about getting inside? Any movement from us will show up on their sensors." "Not necessarily," Zara said thoughtfully. "Veltar ships have maintenance pods, small craft used for external repairs. If one were to break free from its moorings due to structural damage, it would appear to be natural debris movement." "You're suggesting we use a maintenance pod as a Trojan horse?" Marcus said, impressed. "That could work." "It is suicide," Zara stated flatly. "The pod would have no life support, no protection from radiation or debris impacts, and even if we reach the cruiser, there is no guarantee the communication array could be restored to function." "But if it works, we could save lives," Rodriguez said. "Maybe thousands of lives, if the hegemony is planning a larger invasion." Marcus felt the weight of the decision settling on them. It was a desperate plan with little chance of success, but doing nothing meant watching the enemy methodically search until they were discovered and destroyed. "I'll go," he said finally. "I know the most about Veltar technology, and I'm small enough to fit in the maintenance pod." "You cannot go alone," Zara said. "Even if you could reach the cruiser, you would not understand the communication protocols. Veltar systems require biometric authorization from my species." "So we both go," Marcus said. "The pod can carry 2 people, right?" "In theory," Zara replied. "But the life support limitations?" "How long would it take to reach the cruiser and activate the communications?" Rodriguez interrupted. Zara calculated quickly. 20 minutes to traverse the distance, perhaps 30 more to access and initialize the system. If everything goes perfectly. 50 minutes, Marcus said. "We can hold our breath that long if we have to." "That is not how space works," Zara said, but there was something almost like amusement in her voice. "Emergency suits," Rodriguez decided. "Basic life support, enough for an hour. It's risky, but if you can warn Alliance Command..." She looked between them. "I can't order either of you to do this." "You don't have to order me," Marcus said. "This is my idea." "And I cannot allow you to attempt it alone," Zara added. "My people's technology, my responsibility." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "All right. Jakub can maneuver us closer to the cruiser. Make it look like natural drift. You two take the maintenance pod and see if you can get that communication array online." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself squeezed into a Veltar maintenance pod that had definitely not been designed with human physiology in mind. The emergency suit was bulky and uncomfortable, and the pod's controls were labeled in symbols he couldn't read. Zara crouched beside him, her 4 arms working efficiently at the control panel. In the cramped space, Marcus was acutely aware of her alien nature, the way her joints bent at impossible angles, the subtle luminescence that pulsed with her heartbeat, the strange grace with which she moved, despite the awkward confines. "Are you certain about this?" she asked, her voice tinny through the suit's communication system. "Too late for second thoughts now," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice light. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We could be crushed by debris, incinerated by plasma fire, suffocated in the vacuum of space, or captured by the hegemony for interrogation and experimentation," Zara replied matter-of-factly. "You really know how to boost morale," Marcus said. For a moment he thought he saw something that might have been a smile cross her alien features. "It is a useful human trait, this ability to maintain optimism in the face of overwhelming odds." "Is that what you think of us?" Marcus asked as Zara initiated the pod's launch sequence. "Optimistic to the point of stupidity?" "Initially, yes," Zara admitted. "When I first joined this crew, I believed humans were simply too primitive to understand the true dangers of space exploration. Your species lacks the technological advantages that most civilizations require for survival." The pod detached from the horizon with barely a whisper of escaping air. Through the small viewport, Marcus could see the massive bulk of the dead Veltar cruiser growing larger as they drifted toward it. "But," he prompted, "but you compensate for technological limitations with creativity, stubbornness, and something else I have struggled to understand." Zara's hands moved over the controls, making minute adjustments to their trajectory. "Your captain could have fled when the hegemony ships arrived. Any rational being would have preserved their own life rather than risk confrontation with superior forces. Instead, we're hiding in a graveyard planning to send messages from a dead ship," Marcus said. "I can see how that might seem irrational. And yet, it may succeed where rational approaches would fail," Zara acknowledged. "The hegemony expects logical behavior from their enemies. They do not account for species that will sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like duty or justice." The cruiser's hull breach yawned before them like the mouth of some massive predator. Twisted metal and exposed conduits created a maze of obstacles, but Zara piloted the pod through them with expert precision. There, she said, pointing toward a section of the ship's interior. The communication array should be accessible through that maintenance corridor. As they docked the pod to an emergency airlock, Marcus found himself studying Zara's profile in the reflected light from the cruiser's hull. "Can I ask you something personal?" "We are about to attempt what humans would call a suicide mission together," Zara replied. "I believe personal questions are appropriate under these circumstances." "Why did you really join our crew?" Marcus asked. "I mean, you could work for any major corporation, make 10 times what Rodriguez pays you. Why are you here?" Zara was quiet for a long moment as she cycled the airlock. Finally, she spoke. "My people value logic, efficiency, predictability. These are survival traits that have served us well for millennia, but they also make us isolated. We form few bonds with other species, develop little emotional attachment to individuals." They moved through the darkened corridors of the dead ship, their suit lights cutting through the gloom. The cruiser still retained some artificial gravity, making movement easier than Marcus had expected. "When the hegemony attacks began," Zara continued, "my government's response was logical. Evacuate the outer colonies, consolidate forces around the core worlds, minimize losses through strategic retreat. Perfectly rational. But you disagreed." "I had friends on those outer colonies," Zara said quietly. "Individuals who mattered to me beyond their strategic value. When I suggested that we fight for them, rather than abandon them, I was told that my emotional attachment was clouding my judgment." They reached the communication center, a vast chamber filled with complex equipment that hummed with residual power. Marcus whistled softly through his suit comm. "So you left," he said. "I was given a choice. Submit to emotional reconditioning to remove my irrational attachments, or accept exile from Veltar society." Zara moved to the main communication console, her 4 hands dancing across controls that lit up at her touch. "I chose exile. That must have been difficult." "It was liberating," Zara replied, and there was surprise in her voice, as if she were only now realizing this truth. "For the first time in my life, I could act on what I believed was right, rather than what was logical." The communication array came online with a deep thrumming that Marcus felt through the ship's hull. Displays flickered to life, showing system status and power levels. "It works," Marcus said, amazed that their desperate plan was actually succeeding. "Now comes the difficult part," Zara warned. "We must compose a message that Alliance Command will believe, encrypt it properly, and transmit it before the hegemony detects our signal." As they worked together to craft their warning, Marcus found himself stealing glances at his alien companion. The Veltar had always seemed coldly perfect to him, like living machines that happened to be made of flesh. But Zara was different. She had chosen emotion over logic, personal connection over societal approval. "Transmission ready," Zara announced. "But Marcus, there is something you should know. Once we send this message, the hegemony will detect our location within minutes. We may not survive to see whether our warning reaches Alliance Command." Marcus looked at the transmission controls, then at Zara's luminescent face. "Any regrets?" "Only that I waited so long to trust my emotions over my logic," she replied. "What about you?" Marcus thought about her question. He thought about his life back on Earth, the engineering degree that had seemed so important, the career trajectory he'd abandoned to work on salvage ships in deep space. He thought about the simple satisfaction of keeping old machines running, of finding purpose in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. "Just one," he said finally, his hand hovering over the transmission key. Marcus's hand froze over the transmission controls. Through the cruiser's damaged viewport, he could see the lights of hegemony ships moving through the debris field, systematically searching every possible hiding place. Soon they would discover the horizon. Soon this opportunity would be lost forever. "What regret?" Zara asked, her voice soft through the comm system. Marcus turned to look at her, this alien being who had chosen exile over conformity, emotion over logic. In the green glow of the communication array, her bioluminescent skin seemed to pulse with inner light, and her dark eyes held an intensity he had never seen before. "That I never told someone how I really felt about them," he said quietly. Zara tilted her head, a gesture he had learned indicated curiosity. "The someone you left behind on Earth?" "No," Marcus said, his heart pounding. "Someone much closer." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the communication equipment and the distant vibration of the hegemony search ships. Zara studied his face, her alien features unreadable. "Marcus," she said slowly, "are you implying—" "Signal detected!" The harsh electronic voice of a hegemony combat AI suddenly echoed through the cruiser's emergency speakers. "Unknown transmission origin located. Dispatching intercept craft." The spell was broken. Marcus slammed his hand down on the transmission control, sending their warning message racing across space toward Alliance Command. Immediately, alarms began blaring throughout the dead ship as hegemony sensors locked onto their location. "Time to go," Zara said, her 4 hands working frantically to shut down the communication array and cover their tracks. They ran through the cruiser's darkened corridors as the vibration of approaching ships grew stronger. Through gaps in the hull, Marcus could see the bright plasma trails of hegemony fighters converging on their position. "The maintenance pod," Zara said as they reached the airlock. "It may not be fast enough to escape." "Then we'd better hope the horizon is ready for us," Marcus replied, cycling the airlock as quickly as possible. They dove into the cramped pod just as the first hegemony fighters reached the cruiser. Plasma fire lit up the darkness, cutting through the dead ship's hull with surgical precision. Zara's hands flew over the controls, launching them away from the cruiser at maximum acceleration. "Horizon, this is the pod," Marcus called over the comm. "We're coming in hot with company behind us." "Copy that," came Rodriguez's voice. "Stand by for pickup." The next few minutes were a blur of acceleration, plasma fire, and desperate maneuvering. Zara piloted the tiny maintenance pod through the debris field like it was an extension of her own body, weaving between hull fragments and twisted superstructure while hegemony fighters gave chase. "There," Zara pointed toward a gap between 2 massive wrecks. "The horizon!" Marcus could see their ship powering up, its engines glowing as Jakob prepared for emergency departure. The cargo bay doors were already open, waiting for their return. "Pod incoming!" Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. 30 seconds to jump!" A plasma bolt seared past the pod's hull, close enough that Marcus could feel the heat through the thin metal. The hegemony fighters were closing in, their superior speed and firepower overwhelming the pod's defenses. "We're not going to make it," Marcus said, watching the tactical display. "Yes, we are," Zara replied with fierce determination. "Hold on." She cut the pod's engines and used the ship's momentum to slingshot around a piece of debris, gaining precious seconds on their pursuers. The horizon's cargo bay loomed ahead, its landing lights creating a beacon of hope in the darkness. The pod slammed into the cargo bay with bone-jarring force, its emergency clamps engaging automatically. Before Marcus could even catch his breath, he felt the familiar sensation of the jump drive engaging. Space twisted around them, and suddenly, the debris field, the hegemony ships, and the battle-scarred graveyard were gone. "Jump complete," Jakob announced over the ship's comm. "We are clear." Marcus and Zara sat in the damaged pod for a moment, neither quite believing they had survived. Finally, Zara began the shutdown procedures while Marcus checked his suit for damage. "Did the message get through?" Rodriguez asked as the cargo bay repressurized. "It transmitted," Zara confirmed. Whether Alliance Command received it is another matter. They climbed out of the pod on shaking legs. Marcus pulled off his helmet, breathing deeply of the recycled air that suddenly seemed sweeter than anything he had ever tasted. Zara removed her own helmet, her luminescent skin flickering with what he now recognized as relief. "Well," Rodriguez said, looking at the battered maintenance pod, "that was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest." "Probably both," Marcus admitted. Over the next few hours, as the Horizon made its way back to Alliance space, the crew worked to repair the damage from their hasty escape. Marcus found himself in the engine room once again, coaxing performance from systems that had been pushed far beyond their design limits. "Quite an adventure," Zara said, appearing in the doorway. Marcus looked up from his work. In the normal lighting of the engine room, she seemed more alien than ever, tall, graceful, clearly from a civilization far more advanced than humanity. But she also seemed more real, more present than she had in the months before their shared ordeal. "Yeah, it was," he agreed. "Think our message will make a difference?" "I believe it will," Zara replied. "Human stubbornness appears to be contagious. I find myself optimistic about the outcome." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Zara assisting with repairs that required her superior reach and dexterity. Finally, Marcus worked up the courage to speak. "About what I said back on the cruiser," he began. "About having regrets?" Zara asked without looking up from her work. "About never telling someone how I felt." Marcus set down his tools and turned to face her. "I know we're different species, from different worlds. I know your people value logic over emotion. But I also know that you chose exile rather than give up your ability to feel." Zara straightened to her full height. Her forearms folded in what he had learned was a defensive posture. "Marcus, what are you saying?" He took a deep breath. "I'm saying that I care about you, not just as a crewmate or a colleague, but as someone who matters to me, someone I'd be willing to risk my life for." "You already did risk your life for me," Zara pointed out, "and for the mission." "That was duty," Marcus said. "This is something else." Zara was quiet for a long moment, her bioluminescent skin pulsing slowly. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "On my world, emotional attachments are considered weaknesses. Logical beings do not compromise their judgment for the sake of personal feelings." She moved closer, her dark eyes studying his face. "But I am no longer bound by my world's expectations." "What are you saying?" Marcus asked, hardly daring to hope. "I am saying that you are not the only one with regrets," Zara replied. "I have watched you these past months. Your dedication, your creativity, your willingness to risk everything for abstract principles like duty and justice. These are not logical behaviors, yet they are admirable." She reached out with one of her hands, her fingers gently touching his cheek. Her skin was warm, with a texture like fine silk. "I have also found myself developing what my people would call an irrational attachment," she continued, "to this ship, to this crew, to you." Marcus felt his heart racing. "So what happens now? Now we discover what it means for two completely different species to care for each other," Zara said. "It will not be easy. There will be challenges we cannot anticipate, differences we may not be able to overcome." "But," Marcus prompted. "But my exile has taught me that some risks are worth taking," Zara replied, "even if the outcome is uncertain." Before Marcus could respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "All hands, this is the captain. We've just received a priority transmission from Alliance Command. Our message got through, and a fleet is being dispatched to investigate the hegemony incursion. Thanks to our intel, they'll be ready for whatever they find." Marcus and Zara looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Their desperate gamble had worked. Lives would be saved because they had been willing to risk everything on an impossible plan. "I guess human stubbornness really is contagious," Marcus said with a grin. "And fortunate infection," Zara agreed, and this time he was certain that the expression on her alien features was a smile. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned Alliance starship Defiance, watching as construction crews put the finishing touches on the most advanced vessel in the fleet. The ship incorporated technology from a dozen different species, including several innovations that had emerged from the analysis of the Veltar communication array they had restored. "Impressive, is it not?" Zara said, joining him at the viewport. She had been appointed as the ship's chief technology officer, a position that would have been unthinkable for an exile just a year earlier. "It's beautiful," Marcus agreed, "though I bet she'll be temperamental until the crew gets to know her quirks." "All ships have personalities," Zara said, echoing his words from that day in the Horizon's engine room. "It is a human concept I have come to appreciate." Marcus turned to look at her. Over the past months, their relationship had deepened into something neither of them had quite expected. They faced challenges, certainly, cultural differences, communication barriers, the simple logistics of a romance between species that had evolved on different worlds. But they also discovered joys that neither had imagined possible. "Any regrets?" he asked, the same question he had posed on the dying cruiser. "Only that it took the threat of death to make us both honest about our feelings," Zara replied. She reached out with one of her hands, fingers intertwining with his. "What about you?" Marcus thought about the question seriously. His life had taken a completely unexpected turn. Instead of quietly maintaining salvage ships in forgotten corners of space, he was now part of the Alliance's most ambitious technological project. Instead of being alone, he had found love in the most unlikely place with the most unlikely person. "Just one," he said finally. "Which is?" Marcus smiled, remembering their conversation in the maintenance pod. "I regret not asking what you wanted sooner." Zara's luminescence flickered in what he had learned was her equivalent of laughter. "And if you had asked?" "I would have joked and said you," Marcus replied, "just to see what you'd do." Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she began removing the thin, decorative gloves she wore, a Veltar custom that indicated formal distance. She had never removed them in his presence before. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. "Among my people," Zara explained, "removing one's gloves in the presence of another is a sign of complete trust and intimacy. It means you are willing to touch and be touched without barriers." She set the gloves aside and reached out to take his hands in all four of hers. Her skin was even warmer than he had imagined, and he could feel the subtle pulse of her alien circulatory system. "If you had asked what I wanted," she said softly, "I would have said the same thing. You, Marcus Chen. Just you." As they stood together watching the stars, Marcus reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. A desperate mission to warn of invasion had become something much more personal. A joke about desire had become a declaration of love. And two beings from different worlds had found in each other something worth risking everything to protect. The universe was vast and dangerous, filled with species that believed in superiority through force. But it was also filled with unexpected connections, unlikely friendships, and love that transcended the boundaries of biology and culture. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the most human thing you could do was to reach across the void and touch another soul, even if that soul happened to be housed in a 7-foot-tall, 4-armed, bioluminescent alien body. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we find out what the future holds for a salvage engineer and an exiled Veltar," Zara replied. "It will be an adventure." "The best kind," Marcus agreed, squeezing her hands gently. "The kind you share with someone who matters." Outside the viewport, the stars wheeled slowly in their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings who had learned to travel between them. But Marcus knew that among all those distant suns, at least one small corner of the galaxy had become a little brighter because two unlikely souls had found each other in the darkness. And that, he thought, was a pretty good way to start forever.